Welcome aboard to our second podcast. We're again on this quest to meet and find different change makers across the globe who've made a slight dent, a positive one, in bringing about positive change in our built environments. Today, we are blessed to have Anuj Malhotra with us. Uh, Here is our friend, a dear friend, colleague. He's trained as a landscape architect, but I know that he can talk about the city for a very long period of time. He knows everything about in and out of a city, so he's a very unusual landscape architect. A very pleasant one to have long discussions with. Anuj Malhotra is the head of planning and urban development at Srinagar Smart City. He's worked with several government entities. He's worked with the Ministry of Home Affairs. He's also worked with the Delhi government extensively. He's come up with several plans about pedestrianization of Karol Bagh. He's also co-authored he's co-authored several plans, in which one of them is decongestion plan for the city of Delhi, and of course he's done a lot of work in different cities, especially in Diu, where his journey started. This is the first time we got to know about Anuj, was through Diu. Then his journey went on to be in New Delhi, and now he is in Srinagar and having a positive impact there. And how? So we welcome Anuj to StudioPOD, and thank you for taking this time to be with us. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
We are
Thank you so
really
much.
happy to have you with us. And I know I've been pursuing you to come stop by at our
Yes.
studio for a while.
No, I'm always happy to come to Studio Pod. Always very refreshing.
Great. So tell us, Anuj, how did your journey begin as a landscape architect, a fresh landscape architect who graduated from SEPT? From there, how did you choose to work with the cities and with the government?
Well, it's a very long answer. It's a very long journey. It's 25 years, and I had never imagined that I will actually join the government, because generally when we are being taught as professionals, we are taught a lot about how to design, how to plan, very in minutest detail about each and every space that we get in our institutions. You know, we get a very rigorous institutional kind of training there. But what I found that institutions don't really, even the best institutions don't really train you in collaboration, in working together, and in actually doing that bit of negotiation, which is the most important, I would say, the trait or the most important thing that a professional should have. And I am 100% sure that you will agree with me that the most important trait or the most important quality that we need to develop when we become urban designers or urban planners is how can we work together as a team, and how can we work with different verticals and institutions and everybody. So I would say that was the learning curve that I had in the way that I started my journey. As a landscape architect, I did not do farmhouses. That's a very paying, place. But my drive was to actually make an impact on people's lives. So what really I found challenging since the first day was how to get my public space in order. And I started my journey in Kutch, in the most unusual place in India. That was right after the earthquake of Kutch. And the projects that I did were public spaces there, the waterfront, the public park. We designed a couple of houses there, which were earthquake friendly and all. But most of my work dealt with public space, and I could see that if I put a bench somewhere, it would give me such an immense amount of satisfaction that to see that people sitting on that bench and having, let's say, a cob of corn, or just masala peanuts or something, or an ice cream, it was just an immensely satisfying, sight to me, and I think that kept me going. And after Kutch, I did have my own practice, but I wound it up in 2 or 3 years' time, I think, because I got an opportunity to work on the BRTS of Ahmedabad. So I again kind of jumped back into public space design very soon. And since then, it has been not a stopping for me. I went from Pune to Ahmedabad to Chennai, Jaipur, worked with public space on public space design, especially on transportation. And then after I started working in Delhi in DDA, I think that transition happened when I was kind of completely sucked into transportation. When I started kind of looking at the intersection of urban design and transportation together, and I think that's where my real journey started as a complete profession, in a sense that urban planning, urban design, and transportation together. And that's where I did a lot of TOD work. Did the planning for Karol Bagh and a lot of public space planning in Dwarka, which a part of it is implemented. And now that I'm in Srinagar, I'm kind of taking all that I learned to that great city, and trying to see whether this actually makes sense, and to all of our good efforts, that something good is happening there. So I'm very happy about it. So I think that's my major journey, where I think that collaborative working is one of the biggest I would say rewards to our work.
So I think it's also telling that a lot of people start their practice to have this idea that this is my project, and in this case, you're saying that you got more joy when it came out, when the project came out, and people started using it and enjoying it, but not necessarily it was single-handedly your work, and you were fine with it. Absolutely. And that is where I think it's phenomenal that all change makers have to be collaborators at some point of time, and sometimes it's not your project, but it's something that you had a small role to play, but that brings about such a massive scale impact on the city, and that satisfaction is something that is. Tell us about that. Is that what really should be? What should kids of tomorrow be looking for? Is that the need of the hour for our country right now? What should a budding individual who wants to bring about change?
One thing that I saw that I was doing well in the private sector. It's not that there was anything that was left behind. I mean, I was doing well. I was getting paid well. But there is one aspect of the private sector which really bothered me, is that private sector is confined to the project that they are given, or confined to the work that they are given. They cannot expand their work beyond, unless the establishment is very large and they are able to put more man hours to other work which they are not paid for. So that rarely happens. And I think one thing that inspired me to get into the government was that to increase my impact, increase the impact of my work. So let's say if I am making a private garden versus making a public park, private garden which costs say 10 crores and public park which costs 50 lakhs. You see the difference. I mean, it's more humble, but it can create a far more impact with that 50 lakhs, which one will not find in a private garden, because the kids from the slums will come to play, the kids from the neighborhood will come to play, and families will come and have a chat, have a good time in the park. So stuff like that. I mean, I think that's the passion that I carried, and I would say that for any budding professional, if that's a passion you carry, that you have to make a change in public life, then I think that's the place to work. One should look at government work very seriously, and it's not that, yes, everything is a challenge. I mean, even the private sector is a challenge. It's not like you have a cakewalk right from you're a junior level to senior level. It's not a cakewalk. You have to really prove yourself every minute and every time. In a government, it's a different kind of challenge. One is that you have to push your ideas. Those ideas may not gel in the first go with everybody. So to keep holding on to that idea and to actually try and make it happen till the last bit. Let's say it changes. I mean, there are so many people involved. There is a public involved, there is a bureaucrat involved, there is an engineer involved, there are all kinds of decision makers involved. And so your final product may not look like exactly what you had envisioned. But let's say the spirit will always be there. So let's say a cycle track will remain a cycle track, although it may become 1.5 meter, 2 meters, or 3 meters, or 1 meter. But the cycle track will remain there. I mean, that's your kind of gift or your thought to the city, that whatever you wanted to make, you actually got it there, and that's more important, I feel. So having the final millimeter correct may not be your goal, but to get your public to have that facility is actually the goal. So and obviously one should try to make it as best as possible.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It doesn't mean that the government project or any project that you do comes with lower quality of work or by in terms of detailing or any of that. In fact, it has to be doubly detailed so that it is vandal proof, it is long term, and it has so many other things. And and there is I think one of the core philosophies that we also have is there's no distinction that you are in public and you are in private. I think what sometimes the private sector and the work that we do in the private sector helps us become robust and more resilient to work in the government sector, and vice versa, because they inform each other. New materials that were used in some place have done better, worse, can then inform your practice in the public sector of this might work here well and whatnot. So there is always this great, thing for us is to learn from one area and see if we can apply it to other areas for sure. But I think you're absolutely right. One thing I really admire about you is that you started as a landscape architect, and you know the position of a landscape architect in the country right now. Yeah. You know the discipline is kind of in a precarious situation where you can actually become a garden designer. True. And largely people think that we landscape architects are garden designers, whereas they don't think of the city as a landscape. And this big picture thinking, and you shaping your career in that fashion to become a landscape architect who can look at the city from a large scale perspective is something that I really admire. I thought I wanted to share that with you, that very few have the ability to understand scale in landscape and think about a city as part of landscape rather than doing a small park within a larger organism. And to be able to scale this and understand, zoom out and then again zoom into small achievements.
Yeah, I think people like you have helped, and people like you actually, yes, to some extent you're correct, and I would acknowledge what you're saying. So you do know that people like us who are professionals and who want to make that change. One very important aspect of being whatever kind of professional you are is having an open mind. And I think having that space for that dialogue to happen in your mind, and I think that's the only thing that has carried me from being a landscape architect to a transportation specialist, to an urban designer, to an urban planner. I feel these boundaries don't really exist.
Exactly.
It's all, yes, you get trained in a certain way, but I think those boundaries need to vanish, once you get kind of, it's not like you forget about landscape, but it's also that you start appreciating other fields and how those fields actually impact your work in a landscape architect's profession. And I think that um, in the landscape community as well, I think we need not be kind of constrain ourselves to trees and plants as well. I think it's the external space that we are talking about, and the external space means everything apart from the building. In fact, in a lot of cases, the building design is shaped because of the external space. So we need to even understand how building design can be different because of the space that you have around you. So I feel that there is, as the immensely amazing work that StudioPOD is doing, which I know about, I think this great ability to change the public space and to think about the public space in a very different manner, so that it is a win-win situation for three main actors. One is the public, obviously. Second is the private sector as well, and third is the government. So that win-win situation, or that win-win formula, once we develop, I think that's our biggest challenge, that everybody wins. And you as a designer win then.
Yeah.
That's where we are. I mean, I think this is our biggest mainstay in thinking, that how we create that formula for our city, because we do see that there is interest from the private sector. Mm-hmm. In a lot of cities, we see that there is interest in the private sector to make good projects, to actually attract footfalls, to make it better and better for people to use it. Yeah. I think we just need to convert it into public space and see how we can channelize that, so that both win.
Yeah, that's the one thing which we always talk about, right? That you see opportunities everywhere. Like the urban spaces are not defined by land uses. कि यहाँ पे पार्क जाना चाहिए, यहाँ पे एक कोई particular type का land use है तो retail यहीं पे आएगा. It's about all the spaces in between the buildings. Yes. And exactly what you talked about, right? Blurring the boundaries कि कोई landscape सिर्फ नहीं कर रहा, या फिर not only urban design is happening in their own realm, or planning is happening in their own thing, transport in their own thing. How do you merge all of these things together to create the magic? And it's extremely difficult to be in that zone and work in cities, several ones of them within India, and we have done that in several places that we have been mentioning. And to do that on top of it in a place like Srinagar, which is a highly contested kind of a political entity for several years, and now since you have been there, positioned yourself for the last 6-7 years, and seen all the transformation that has unfolded, and we have been following all the work that's happening there, and it's absolutely fantastic how things have turned around there in the last few years. How do you see that as a challenge, and how do you kind of maneuver between things? Can you just tell us a bit more about the story of how that kind of came about?
Yeah, those will be a lot of stories. It's not one single story, and it's a story of everybody.
Yeah.
So it's not just my story, it's a story of my colleague, chief engineer, it's a story of my decision maker, my boss, our commissioner. So we all have our stories.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that every person who was involved in our team has a story of his own.
Yeah.
So, well, I would say that yes, it was a difficult place. It is a difficult place, but I think that challenge is everywhere. That kind of challenge. Let's say in Mumbai, the challenge is phenomenal in trying to do this kind of work. Maybe in that sense, Srinagar might look like a small kid in that space of all the cities that we have. Srinagar has a different challenge. Srinagar had a different challenge in the sense that Srinagar, because of the difficult times it has gone through, we strongly felt as designers, and I feel when the work that we also did with StudioPOD in the early 2017, I think one thing that we all kind of felt about the city is that the city needs to unshackle itself. I think, one thing that city had gone through was a lot of entrapment over the past years. And that entrapment actually, not just physical, I mean mental entrapment, in the sense that you would just intrinsically feel unsafe, even if there is no safety issue. You would kind of barb it, or you would like to wall it in a way so that it kind of makes secure, but actually it makes you more insecure. Correct. Because you're not talking to your neighbor, and then it actually is a more insecure environment when you're not talking to your community enough. And if you're not able to see from eye to eye, I mean, those are insecure things actually, makes things a little more difficult. I think what we really felt very strongly was to unshackle and to lay it out for people to see transparently. I mean, just the mere fact that you're just walking freely, right. Or when you're walking, everything is visible. Those kind of very simple things. I think those were the philosophies we based our work on. So, for example, if you look at the riverfront, riverfront of Srinagar. So when we started our work in Rajbagh area and the central part of Srinagar, the riverfront was actually not visible because there was a 2 feet footpath to the riverfront, and there was a fence, and there was concertina wire inside, and there was another fence, and then there was a river. So actually the river was not visible. What we did was to just take away the fences and the wires. That's the main work we did. I mean, obviously
the visual connection that you got.
The visual connection to the city. Yeah. I mean, that's all we did. And yes, the footpath looks a little better because we made it right. The green space looks a little better, but because we made it a little better. The lighting is good. All of that is done. But the main impact is the visibility. Is that you are able to just traverse the space as as you would do in any other city in the world. So I think that is where it touched people's hearts. And more of that is what people want, is what we realized. Because it's really satisfying to see that people are now in that space till 12 in the midnight. And we had seen, and I'm sure that you had seen at that point, that people would just shut down in their houses after 7 o'clock, 7:30. Yeah. I mean, it was complete dark space, And now you see lit public space till midnight, and you don't feel the need for a CCTV because there are eyes on the street, there are families, and kids roaming around. So it's really a pleasure. So I think that's the idea, that's the core idea which drove our work, and we wanted to make it more and more people friendly, more and more social friendly. So some of the spaces we converted into complete pedestrian spaces, like the Polo View Street, which is very well known. There were expats used to come, and very high in demand, and high economy of that street, very famous since 1940s. We converted that into a public plaza, like the whole street is now a public plaza. And the footfall have risen 40 times without any exaggeration. The shops are open till 11 in the night, while they would shut down at 8 o'clock or 7:30. The economy of that place has risen by 10 to 20% easily because of the rising footfalls. Stuff like that. I think, it's just that when you have gone through a bad phase in your life, you would want to open up and meet more friends. That's just the
amazing,
magic.
Right? Yeah, it's at times it's just about like breaking the wall, as you're saying, literally, right?
Literally.
By removing the barbed fences and the barriers, you've increased the security. Isn't that the most counterintuitive statement you've ever sort of?
That's very well put.
And that's about everybody in, as you're saying, regardless of Srinagar or any other place, a lot of our cities, under the name of security, are doing that, right? More privatization of spaces happen. We want to be in our own bubble and own zone. But the mere fact, what you exactly explained, right? The economy of the place totally takes a 360-degree turn and changes the way it has to be looked at, right? And from publicness of a place itself, how people use the place, it's just a matter of fact, wherever you work, simple things like that have to be told and retold and seen as a demonstration.
Yeah, I'll give you another example of the conversation I had with the Central Reserve Police Force there and the Army and the JK Police. So we have these are all our stakeholders, and we obviously can't do anything which jeopardizes their work,
Right.
because they're also very important stakeholder. So I had very good conversations with the DIG and with the IG, and we were just discussing as to if our work is hampering their work in any sense, that we need to cut down on something that we are radically changing or something. But it was quite the opposite that I got as a feedback from them. They said that it is really helping us that you're breaking the walls, because now we are able to see very far. And
from their perspective as well,
from their perspective. So we need to see far, and therefore it's really helping. So thank you very much. So it was really nice to hear that.
Yeah. So it's amazing how what you mentioned about one department's issue has been resolved by like simple things in urban design and how you work towards it, right? How has it been with like people within the system apart from like the high level officials, the engineers, the real people who make difference on ground, right? When you're doing these kind of projects, from capacity perspective, from their understanding perspective, how difficult was it to interact and get them on board on such things when you actually have to implement these kind of projects?
Yeah, that's a great question, because obviously that's where the first challenge begins. And Srinagar obviously has been doing different kind of work over the past 30 years. And it was a very big challenge for us. It's government work. In the private sector, it's easy for us. That I'm not saying that it's completely easy, but what I'm trying to say is that at the end of the day, we are not responsible for what comes on the ground in the private sector. We are responsible for what we produce in the office and what we submit and what we convince the government about. So that much we are responsible for. But ultimately, it's the government who decides what comes on the ground. And so whatever plan is prepared, maybe a part of it comes on the ground or the whole comes out on the ground. So it is completely a government's decision. That's where the major challenge lied for us, because we in the government itself were trying to propose some radical changes. And we were supported by a lot of people, experts who were also there as part of our team. And one of the major issues that we faced were capacity issues earlier. So a lot of discussions used to happen, and seemingly for days and weeks together. We had our boss used to take 9-hour back-breaking meetings. Like we used to not have lunch or dinner, and we would sit in a meeting hall from morning till late evening, and also till midnight, and sometimes till 3 a.m. And we had like really long meetings for days together. And it was about getting confidence about what we are trying to do. Because it is not just us who is going to get impacted, but it is going to be the people of the city who's going to get impacted. So we had to be very sure about what we were doing, and making changes like, for example, optimizing a street, which had never been done in India. I have not heard of that being done anywhere in the country. Optimizing street meaning that your general road is probably narrow or wide wherever the opportunity is. We were trying to make it for one single width, and even if there was a wider section available, we were giving it to the footpath and not to the road, because the road was of a constant width. Stuff like that, very simple stuff like that. Even the codes say that, but the familiarity to the codes is not as much to the engineering. So those were the challenges that we faced quite a bit, and I would say that holding on to those ideas was the main thing. I mean, I would really give a lot of credit to my boss for holding on to the correct ideas, so that they actually got implemented. Because otherwise there are all kinds of people saying all kinds of things. You can get distracted. I mean, and you can get swayed. It's very easy, because We know that what happened the first time when we did optimize a street, there was a very heavy backlash, the media backlash, and all pundits actually were against us. So there was hardly anything going with us at that point, and it was a point where we could have retracted, and it could have broken everything that we had done. But that's to full credit to my boss, Mr. Athar Amir Khan. We held on to those ideas. We marched on, and we did not go back, retreat on in any sense. And we did the positive conversation with the media. We did the positive conversation with all the pundits, and we are back, and it all went back. So one thing is about in planning that we need to be confident, and we need to be absolutely sure about what we are doing, and present that with good courage. I mean, one thing that we get afraid is by our decision makers that we'll be stabbed in the back, we'll be put down, looked down, thrown out. Those kind of feelings do happen in with our superiors, but I think one needs to be courageous about one's training and one's knowledge, and march on with that, and be courageous about presenting your idea, even if it seems to be completely out of sync. And that courage is what gives courage to the decision maker, because then he feels courageous that he's actually taking a decision which is based on some sound logic, and that logic needs to be presented correctly. Obviously, one has to do a lot of work behind before presenting that idea, and I think doesn't need to be a shallow idea. It needs to be a properly well worked out idea, which I think we are all capable of. And once that logic is presented, I don't think any person in the good sense of mind would actually just refute it whimsically. It is not possible. So our bureaucrat or our boss also did not do that. He looked at the logic, he found it sound, and he checked it in various forums, in various areas before saying yes to it. So he did his
own homework,
his own due diligence, and our engineer did his own due diligence, looking at the engineering part of it. So everybody did their own bit. The logic was sound, and so we marched on. And to the immense credit to him, that we did not roll it back even when there was a public backlash. And we told them that you did not know what an iPhone was until the iPhone came into the market. So yes, holding on to the idea, perseverance, pushing the right idea, and then actually making it happen was a very big deal to our team. And eventually, I would say that our team is one of the best teams in the J&K who has done this kind of work, public space work, and they are very well trained, and they have now the insight and the orientation as to how these kind of projects are actually made to happen on the ground. And I would really say that at any point in time, I would highly recommend my team to anybody who wants to work with and get trained from. Because they can actually now train a lot of engineers. So it was a very big hurdle that we crossed, but we crossed it quite nicely.
It's absolutely amazing to hear the whole story that you just put in a very, very short summary, right? What I heard was the stewardship which was there, the leadership had that belief in the vision that you put across, and really taking it through, believing in that, and making sure everything was taken through at the points where it was about to fail and at the brink of it, right? The communication that followed it to ensure that the people are also comfortable. That is extremely crucial, right? A lot of the public projects, we have had instances where a contractor has been abducted on site and trying to because a lot of backlash happens with a lot of things, right? So communication is a key of actually telling people that what is happening is in the short term seems to be a hindrance, but in the long term it's going to be a really kind of important thing for the overall place in the neighborhood itself.
So one thing that I would add here is that as a planner or as a person who's behind kind of writing these visions, there is a lot of work that needs to be done behind. I mean, one needs to be aware of that. And so a good amount of work that helps you build that logic is something that one should be kind of okay to do. I mean, one of the things that I find in a lot of planners who are in the government or the urban designers who are part of the government is that, we get this into a complacent mode about, working only, let's say, a little bit, or, working only those many hours that we are paid for, stuff like that. I think we need to put a lot more behind it if we have to really make that change. So, one is that we need to be doing a lot of hard work. Second is building a very sound logic. And third is holding on to it and not getting discouraged with whatever is being said in the room if your own logic is sound. So I think those things are extremely important. And one needs to do convincing at every minute. My the design of the road, let's say, could have changed at any point in time, because every day the engineers would come back from the site and say that this is not working, that's not working, and we need to go back to the site saying that, okay, this is how you make it work, this is how you make it work. So it was like a daily exercise. It was not like once I presented the idea, it was okayed and it was constructed. Yeah. No, it's not like that. So it's like a meeting of interdepartmental meeting which will happen on that subject almost like twice in a week. And then the engineers are working on the site daily and the contractors are working. So it's a daily kind of a job till the product is fully delivered. Yeah. So it's a lot of hard work.
To stand your ground all the time.
To stand your ground all the time, yes. And also I've seen in a lot of cases that the planners and architects don't get involved in the site. So once the idea is put through as a drawing, I think their relation to the site kind of minimizes, and that's a very wrong thing. I think our work does not end till the site is fully delivered. Yeah. So those are one of the most important things I feel that should be kind of.
Yeah. In fact, going back to the site and seeing what works and what not works is also part of some analysis that makes you smarter for the next assignment.
True.
I'm sure. So that's, I have this immense sense of pride when it comes to the transformation of Srinagar. Just to give you a little background, Anuj Malhotra was back then a traffic advisor, transit and traffic advisor to the city. And he says, StudioPOD, come over. There is a big road that is going to come all along Dal. That was the proposal by the Roads and Bridges Department back in the day. And StudioPOD being StudioPOD, we just don't look at one road. We gave a whole big vision plan for Dal as a center and Srinagar as a city. One of the ways, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, did we did some calculations and some transport analysis that said that we needed 40 trips per hour on foreshore road and we will not need to expand the road, and the road did not expand after that. And then of course the whole water story was just phenomenal discovery for us, because we discovered Srinagar and the history and the heritage and the richness, and we recommended that maybe we need to have public transit in terms of shikaras. We need to connect the heritage gardens back to the lake, which were disconnected by these infrastructure and things. And that was 2017, and cut to 2023, and I see you posing on LinkedIn with these 60 buses in the background. With a massive waterfront proposal, with Lal Chowk, with Shalimar Bagh connection, and I had this immense sense of pride, even though I had done nothing to do with it. It's like you said, it's easy to present an idea, draw something up, and submit it as a vision plan for Dal. But I can't tell you the immense pride that I had at that point of time when I saw you pose with those buses. That it's all right. We couldn't go through the entire plan because the institutional framework wasn't in place, but you hung around and you made things that seemed impossible happen. So tell us about this little journey of how did this happen?
Well, it doesn't happen like that. It's just One needs to just hold on to everything. I mean, it's just that, I've seen, Sarfraz, I saw you working on Dal Lake, and I saw that passion in you, that, you held on to some very radical ideas in your report. And some of those ideas we had not heard of earlier. And in case we were close-minded about it, I mean, we would have been there still. So I think that's the whole charm of working with different professionals. And I think what, as I told you in the earlier question you asked, that something that holds me together or holds me to the idea is that to make it happen and to make a change in public life. So I think that idea held me together. And once we had produced a good plan for the city, and during 2017 and 18, that was the time when I got a lot of time to actually work on the planning of the city. And we made a lot of these plans which we were hoping to get implemented at that time, and unfortunately the disposition changed at the last minute, and right when we were on to that idea of implementation, I think that's the change when it happened. But those ideas remained, and we had a good repository of all of those ideas. And I think I got this chance again to actually be in the city again, and for that I'll thank my wife for it, because she pushed me back into the city, and she had a role to play. And we kind of I came back with those ideas, and we started implementing it. So it was my kind of passion to get back, even if the disposition changed, but the ideas remained the same, because what we discovered at that point in time was that it was not the road widths that would make the change, it was the public transport that will make the change. Because Srinagar, being very high up in the mountains, also has this air quality issue. And since we are in a valley kind of a situation, the air gets trapped. So whatever fumes that come out would always just hang in that valley, will linger around in that valley, would hang in that space. So public transport, as was rightly kind of looked at, public transport becomes the most important aspect of mobility in a place like Srinagar. And since the entire city is based on water, the other important aspect is to actually make the water very navigable for the public. So the water transport and the bus transport together kind of integrate into a good public transport system. So now, extremely happy to say that our Honorable LG Saab has actually now funded the bus system for 100 buses, and now there's another 100 buses soon to come, and we are looking at the entire public transport system, which is completely electrified on Dal as well as Jhelum. So both the water bodies will get connected through a system. So that's a major that's a major thing. Yeah,
that is such music to our ears. To see this place that was termed as not transit friendly, to then create awareness and follow through with conviction on a plan that you truly believe in, that this will transform the city, and then to see it materialize, and recent numbers are in. Can you just share what the numbers?
Sure. So our cycling infrastructure, let me start from there. Cycling infrastructure we have made around 50 kilometers of cycle tracks in the city. Our cycling percentage has actually increased by nearly 14%. So just the sheer number of cyclists has increased. It is very heartening to see that how the people in the old city, or Shahr-e-Khas as we say, were actually demanding the cycling infrastructure over there. And so all the youngsters, like we get many requests on email, on letters, to actually start cycling in the old city. And so we started the cycling in the old city. And it's amazing to see the take up on the cycling by the young and the ones that you wanted to ride. So we have now 2,000 bicycles in the city and about 50 kilometers of cycle tracks, and I'm 100% sure that we will even double that number in the coming time. So that's about cycling. Walking, I feel that we have made at least a 5% dent on the positive side. People walking, because you can just see that. I mean, you look at our new streets, which are wide footpaths, and they are just 6 inches high from the road, and they are continuous. There's no obstruction. All the poles have gone. All the any kind of obstruction has been taken care of. Wherever there's a road intersection, it comes in as a tabletop, so you don't have to go down or up. You can just walk straight. So many great things have happened in terms of walking, and I'm quite sure the walking percentage has increased by nearly 3 to 5%, if not more. The public transport uptake has been phenomenal, and I would say that it has been phenomenal. The ridership has gone up to 5 lakhs. It's amazing the kind of response that we are getting out of just 70 buses, and we are going to increase it to 200. We are getting requests from Pulwama, which is 50 kilometers south, Ganderbal, which is 20 kilometers north, Patan, people want to ride till Baramulla, to Anantnag, which is like far off places, and the demand for buses is just phenomenal. So it's very heartwarming to see that kind of demand, and I'm really hoping that we are able to fulfill that demand. That's the next challenge, actually.
Amazing numbers and transformation. And then a place that you would have thought prefers to, the weather's harsh, and people want to be in their cars, and all these ideas that are always thrown at us.
Yeah.
In all the cities, right? Like in all the towns and cities in the country, the same thought is there.
Same excuses. And then what was also really heartening to see was from absolutely zero public transit in 2017.
Yeah.
Today, you have a public transit map of Srinagar.
Yes.
With different bus
Very
routes,
proud.
which is
Very proud about it. Yes, absolutely.
And it is. It feels like a city anywhere in the West which would have a transit map like that for bus routes.
Yeah.
And tell us, how did that come across?
I think having good planners in the system helps. No, really speaking, for example, small things these electric buses are everywhere, so they're getting delivered in every city. But when they came to Srinagar, we put a very small item in the BOQ, and that was kind of my contribution to the entire technical specifications. I put that the buses should be heated as well. So a small thing like that, and I think that's the sensitivity we as planners or urban designers have, because we want that people should come on the public transit, and now our buses are heated. We are the only bus in India which is heated.
Amazing.
And by the same manufacturer. So they went the extra mile, they had to do it, and it's a heated bus. And it has an air curtain also, and there's no air curtain anywhere in the country except for the airport buses. So our buses have an air curtain and a heated environment. So I mean, it's all about
more comfortable to ride a bus.
Absolutely.
And actually taking your own car.
Absolutely, by any means, yes. And we are, apart from that, we are running service since 6 a.m. in the morning till 12 in the night. So essentially, it's almost a 24-hour service, although not almost, because we have to get the buses for the charging. So we have to get it back in the depot. But otherwise, the buses are always plying. So one gets a feeling that, there's always a bus available, even at late in the night. So if you have an ambulance which is stuck somewhere, I'm sure the bus will arrive first.
Superb. No, that's amazing. Is there a public transit shikara?
Very soon.
So I thought that was one of the most innovative solutions that we could ever unearth while we were working in Srinagar, was this idea that public transit is not trains, and if you understand mobility, it's about what can move people, and just the geography of Srinagar is such that right in the middle is such a massive lake. Why are we not utilizing the lake for public transit? And which used to be the case for centuries, and we forgot about it. And so give us an update on the boats.
So on the boat side, what we're doing is we are looking at two different kind of systems. One is a taxi system, so which is a boat on call. So that's one, and the other is a public transit system. And now the public transit system is where we have a higher capacity boat running in various routes, and we are trying to make it compete with road to some extent. Actually, we ourselves are doing it. The reason is that unless the boat competes with the road, the takers on boat initially would be less. Because if the boat takes the same amount of time as the people on the road, then I think it's less attractive at the moment. Because as you know, over past 70 or 100 years, we have turned our back from the water. So our waterfronts are not as developed as, let's say, our road infrastructure is. Let's say we have a footpath and we can jump onto the bus, but we don't have a similar facility on the water. So that will take some time. The infrastructure takes a little bit of time to get developed. It takes about 1 or 2 years to actually come up. So till that time, we are trying to look at the routes which are a little faster on the water as compared to what we would do it on the road, and so the uptake on the boat kind of increases. So what we're doing is we're looking at fast service on the water and a slow service on the water. So you have two kinds of services. The fast service obviously is, as you would know, that it's an express, so means that it will have less stops. So only the most important stops, let's say not more than 4. And the slow service would actually stop everywhere. So if you have that time, so you can obviously take that. The express service will charge a little higher, slightly higher, not very high, but we can ensure you the time and the reliability. So those are the 3 kind of services which we are looking at on the water. Hopefully, I think in the near future we can even invite private boat players to actually come dock, maybe develop like you had presented in one of the reports, that maybe develop a jetty kind of a terminal where you have, let's say, a restaurant to eat, have a cafe, just hang around, and your private boats get parked there. So you pay probably a fee, a small fee, but you have the right kind of docking. So all of that we are going to seriously look at in the coming future. So that's really the future of Srinagar.
This is something that is pretty interesting, is that there is constant innovation that is happening, and it's not repeating or getting inspired from some place and then just bringing it and implanting it over here. You have to then customize it, contextualize it, change it a little bit, and that is where real innovation happens. So I think that is pretty phenomenal, that the first heated bus, public transit bus of the country is in Srinagar, and that's super, because it's all about people and comfort. How do you make sure that people would choose to take public transit rather than being forced to take public transit? And no better example than this, where we've brought about that cultural shift, which will be long lasting, more sustainable than short bursts of enforcement and design changes that one can believe in. So I think big congratulations. Kudos to you and your team for leading the way and inspiring us and professionals across the country, where there is so much to get disheartened, and then there are these little moments where you can get inspired. So you've created one of those stories for us where we can get inspired and refer, always saying that if Srinagar can do it, a real case study, if Srinagar can do it, anyone should also be able to sort of do it, because it's a politically challenging environment. It's a difficult weather to deal with, and at the end of the day, it was about bringing about on ground impact, which seemed impossible a decade ago.
Even behavioral change of people from what you're saying and moving to transit and
Yes.
really attracting them enough to do all of that. It's quite motivational. All the stuff which you have said right now, it's
Thank
inspiration to us over here. I'm sure it will be inspirational to a lot of people.
I would
who will be
add
listening
here
to this.
that one small thing, that one of the biggest steps to beginning of that change had been the making of a team. So I would, to full credit to my boss, that he thought about a planning department inside the smart city, and also an engineering department inside the smart city, and making that team, actually hiring people from the market. So we are actually part of the team full time, 100% time. There are no additional charges, or there are no people hired from different departments. It's actually an in-house department, in-house team, and I think the planning department does not exist in any other smart city in the country. It's only in Srinagar that it exists, and you can see the change it has made to the entire work of Srinagar Smart City. So I think that has been the biggest, I would say, if I have to say, the most important contribution, or the most important reason of the change, whatever you see, is that the team exists and the team works together. So the planning and the engineering. So generally what you will see in the department is that the engineer, the chief engineer, would take all the calls. He would also take the planning calls, also take the design calls, not just the engineering calls. But in Srinagar Smart City, that's different. So engineer only takes the engineering calls, and the planning calls are taken by the planner. So we are both kind of at the same position, and whatever calls, major calls, obviously we contribute, we kind of dialogue with each other, but the call is taken by the planner. So that's really different, and I think that's really, it has really helped kind of shape up the projects the way they have been shaped up. So all credit to my boss for that.
It's amazing. The one thing which I keep on saying is the institutional framework which is missing in a lot of our cities, even in a big city like Mumbai, where BMC has everything under the disposal. But how does planning urban design come as an institutional framework to enable right kind of people coming in, onboarding them, having the right kind of exact team who can maneuver different departments, different disciplines to make them work together. And hats off to what you have been doing. Like we have so inspired to look at it like as a model to take at several places, right? We're currently working in several places, including Goa, where exactly a similar situation of how do you get the behavioral change, get like public transit to be the forefront, like all of the points that you could have talked about, right? But the biggest thing which you talked at the end was the collaboration with the team and the framework that establishes that, right? It's quite a powerful thing. It's a small thing in the larger puzzle, but it's the most important and effective way of working within the environment.
Totally, I would say that, yes. And whenever we have an internal team in place, it makes space for others to come. It's not that it gets competing with the external world, not that. It actually makes space for the consultants to come. So we have the best consultants in India who we are working with, and I think we put out our empanelment program for twice. I think once, StudioPOD kind of missed applying for it, but all the other agencies in the country who are urban design firms are actually part of the Srinagar Smart City. So we made space for all of the good people to come and work with us, and they are currently working with us. So I think by having an internal team, what happens is that the guidance happens in a proper way. The systematic guidance and the systematic inputs are given in a proper way, and they make space for everybody to collaborate. So I think that internal team is the most important thing that I feel that every government should look at very seriously.
It's amazing. No, I think it's been a long conversation, and whatever we have discussed can't be kind of summarized and like ended in that sense. But all good things have to come to a wrap up. But I'm glad that we had this discussion, Anuj, and I'm so again will commend you for what you have been doing. And
Sure, thank you.
Srinagar is one thing, and I hope it takes to several more cities and all across India. And I know it's a lot of hard work. We need champions like you working with several kind of cities all across India to bring the transformation. And that's something which we all aspire to inspire as well by your work and what Srinagar is doing. And I hope everybody listening on the program over here on the podcast is really inspired by this discussion today.
Thank you.
We were hoping that it would end up in a way that we can continue this conversation more, and we'll see if we can again get you back. Several questions not tackled, but
But let's end with really how did your work bring joy to the people of Srinagar? Let's end with a story or two that you can share, which lets you sleep at night and then in peace, and it'll inspire everyone. If you could share just a couple of.
Sure. So let me tell you a story which brought tears in our eyes. And so we got a call after some of our work was inaugurated and people started using it. And we got a call from the Blind Institute in Srinagar. And as always, I mean, different institutes call us for giving a talk or having a discussion. We thought that it is a similar kind of thing, and we kind of so my boss, myself, and my chief engineer, we all three of us went for that. And so when we reached there, and we were sitting and they were talking, and so we asked them that what is the subject of our meeting. So they had actually called us to thank us. and they were in little tears, and it brought tears to our eyes, all three of us. And they were thanking us for making the blind tactile strip on each footpath. And they were thanking us for that, and they were saying that it has been the greatest gift to the city, and because of that strip, now we are able to walk on the footpaths that you have created. So it was a very moving moment for us, and we always thought, and obviously, I mean, I am trained for it, but let's say the other team members always thought that probably, I don't know why we are doing that, why we are looking at a tactile so seriously. I mean, we are putting it everywhere, and even if there is a narrow footpath, you're still putting it. So we just put it because it was there in the drawing, and we put it in the drawing. But that's when, we kind of, when we got acknowledged for that, and now it's a default. So that's, I would say, the biggest story that I can share.
Amazing. No, and it's some things that you assume, who's going to use it?
Yeah.
Why provide universal accessibility? How many people come in a wheelchair?
Exactly.
And these are the questions that are always thrown at you. It's an additional cost and trouble. Why do this? So you're saying we should stick to the years of research that has gone into all these things to make it universally accessible. And there are users who will use it and will thank you someday for doing it. No, and an absolutely inspiring story, because that's what a city is. If it's inclusive for the most vulnerable,
yep,
then it's a humane city.
Yep.
And thank you for creating a humane city in Srinagar for us.
Thank you so much.
Great. This was a great conversation.
Thank
I'm really
you.
happy you could make time for this.
No, I'm happy to be here, and always a pleasure to talk to you both and to talk to Bansi. She's not here, but we're missing her, but hope to see you soon again. Yeah, thank you.
Hopefully we'll work together.
Thank you. Thank you for calling me here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.